Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to another week of Tuesday Tutorials. This is episode number 2. Last week, talked about what to do when the game completely breaks down and nothing goes right, and how do you respond. And this week we have kind of a different lesson. It's, what do you do when you actually have the advantage, and you want to close out the game to actually, to actually win? Excuse me. So yeah, we're going to see a game where the player gets an advantage. We'll see what he does with it, whether or not he actually pulls it out, actually takes his lead all the way and wins the game, or if he kind of falters along the way and crumbles. So, first of all, I just want to thank the people who did send in games. Appreciate it. There were only 2 of them, but thank you nonetheless. I am looking for more games to do every week, because this is an interactive show where I'm trying to help you guys out, help myself out as well. We'll all learn together. And I guess, without further ado, let's start off the game. So, this week, our lovely game was sent in by the player named Afrin, who's on the bottom, who's facing Axlay on the top. So let's get started. So we can see Axlay has a decent amount of wins. Pretty sizable collection, and we'll see. Our hero Afrin is playing I guess you would call it a Mew box deck. It's got Mew, Yanmega, Vileplume, and looks like a nice little Tech Roserade line in there. So, you know, as always with these, we don't focus as much on the deck list as we do about just using what we have at hand and making the best decisions we can based on what we have in front of us. So, here we can see not too outrageous deck. We have a Vileplume in his hand, a Muck, and a Catcher, which might be questionable, but that's okay. We'll live with that. And our opponent is playing Reshiram Typhlosion. So, right off the bat, we do some straightforward stuff. We play Rainbow on the Mew, Copycat. You know, you want to use See-Off right away. And let's stop here. First of all, right here. Alright, so right off the bat, we got an interesting choice. We have an okay hand. We have a Rainbow on the Mew. We do have a Clef in our hand, though. But what do you want to do? Do you want to see off first turn, making your Mews useful? Or do you want to try to retreat and eke for a better hand? Because beyond the Mew, you might be able to get a Yanmega next turn, but maybe your hand's not too playable. So which one do you want to do? Let you guys take a second to think it over. Do you want to use See-Off, or do you want to play down the Cleffa, retreat, and eke? And alright, let's see what Afrin decides to do. Looks like he's going to decide to bench the Cleffa and retreat. Now, alright. He's going to eke. Now let's just stop. Why did we not want to do that? Well, alright, let's rewind a little bit. A little too far. Need to get better at my rewinding skills. Alright, so here we are. Alright, now take a look at this hand. You have a See-Off option, which will allow you to take advantage of your Mews. You also have a Communication and a Pokemon, so you can get your Yanmega, you can judge, and then what more do you want from this deck? This is pretty much everything you want besides a Collector on the first turn, but I guess Afrin was just kind of looking at his hand thinking, uh-oh, I don't really have many options, so I'm going to eke. So I think this is the first part where you kind of lost sight of your goal. You're trying to see off, put a Pokemon in the lost zone so your Mew is actually worth something, not just a 60 hit point basic that looks cool. You know, until you get a Pokemon in the lost zone, it doesn't really do anything. So right off the bat, we're going to see a questionable decision, but it's alright. There's plenty of game to go, so let's move on. Alright, so let's retreat, and he's going to eke. Now, what this does is make it almost impossible for Mew to provide any sort of pressure anytime soon. It also potentially took away his turn 2 Yanmega option. And also, if he did get a turn 2 Yanmega, it would weaken the rest of his game because his Mew, which is a big focus of the deck, I'm sure you committed a lot of cards just having Pokemon that you directly put in the Lost Zone and they have no other purpose. So all those cards become useless, the Mew becomes useless, but it looks like his opponent's hand is not very good, so it didn't really hurt him. So now we're going to see a communication. He's going to shuffle in Yanma. And yeah, here we go. He's going to get Yanmega. Now I can see right off the bat there's not a very heavy Yanmega line, but again, we're not worrying about deck list or anything like that. So here we go. And we have a Yanmega. We're going to see the Cyndaquil get knocked out, I would think. He has an option to attach an energy here, decides not to. We're going to see a Copycat for 5. And I like that decision. You don't want to judge an opponent that just didn't do anything on his second turn. So he plays a Copycat for 5. He's going to retreat to Yanmega. As we can see, his hand wasn't very good, but he's going to put some pressure on. And Sonic Boom. And Sonic Boom. Alright, there we go. So, our guy Afrin here. Let's take another second to pause. Let's take a look at the field. Axlay. He lost to Cyndaquil. All he has is a Reshiram with a fire. Staring down a Yanmega. A Roserade. I think we can say at this point, Afrin has the advantage. There is no setup at all for Axlay. He's on the back foot. He lost the first prize. He's at a disadvantage. So how can Afrin take advantage of this and take the game all the way, finish it out, and get a victory? So we'll see how the rest of the game plays out before we go any further. Alright, so now Axlay just attaches a fire, and he outrages for 20. Now, if I'm Afrin here, probably thinking, oh, well, I can get a quick win here. So what's he going to do? It's like he debated retreating. But at this point, you see your opponent only has one Pokemon. You want to take advantage of this. Now, hold on. Saw something else. Alright, let's go back. So, right now, what are you thinking? You're thinking, the only obstacle in my way is this Reshiram. The only goal I have at this point is knocking this out. That's where all of his energy is. That's his only Pokemon. So, I want to do whatever I can to knock this thing out. Now, we see he decides to attach a Psychic Energy to his Relicanth. Now, I don't agree with this. What would you rather do here? Well, you have this Roserade sitting here. You might as well take advantage. Put the Rainbow on it, Poison and Confuse. That'll threaten a knockout next turn. Even if he attacks and gets heads and knocks out your Yanmega, that Reshiram is going down with a simple Power Blow from Roserade next turn. If he doesn't get another Pokemon, the game's over. So maybe a missed opportunity here. He was probably not thinking about it at the time. Puts the Psychic on Relicanth. And the other thing that's bad about Relicanth is he takes up another one of our precious bench spots. Right now we have a Roserade who's not really doing much. A Cleffa, not really doing much. A Mew, there's no Pokemon in the Lost Zone, he's not doing much. And a Relicanth, who's really not doing much. So, at this point, the only attacker we have to our name is Yanmega. And if we play Copycat, we can't play any more cards now, so a simple Outrage knocks out your Yanmega, and then, uh-oh, you're left with no attackers, and there's a Reshiram staring you in the face. So, this is definitely step one of throwing away your advantage. You know, you're in a good spot, and you made a simple mistake, putting an energy in the wrong spot, not attacking your opponent's weakness correctly. And here we go. He's probably going to walk right into an Outrage knockout. He's going to Sonic Boom. His other option would have been to retreat to Mew and use Sea Off. I think that probably would have been a better option. But he's going to allow this Reshiram to get a quick knockout. And here we go. Now, Axlay was way behind. You know, things were not looking good. But just like that, the game turned around. You know, it seemed like Afrin couldn't really lose, but now it's looking a little dicey. And as we can see, if he would have attached to Roserade last turn, the poison damage would have added up to where Reshiram would have 40 hit points left, Power Blow would have knocked it out, and the game would have been over. So, a missed opportunity there, but not the end of the world. And now we're going to see how the rest of the game plays out, because Axlay, honestly, he has nothing in play still. He's got Reshiram, that's about it. So we're going to see, he uses C off for Crobat Prime. Okay, so now we finally got a Pokemon in the Lost Zone. We got something to do with Mew. You know, our opponent still isn't in a good spot, so this game is far from over. You know, we didn't make the greatest play in the beginning. That's fine. It's a long game. It's still 5-5 prizes. Nothing wrong. So now we even catch a break. Reshiram flips for confusion, and it gets Tails. So, hey, it's at 120 damage now. Poison's gonna knock it out. He can do whatever he wants, and Reshiram's gonna be knocked out. So, that's pretty much all there is to it. So, even though there was a little mistake at the beginning, it's alright. The advantage is swinging back into our favor. So, how do we take advantage from here? We have this Reshiram that's going to be knocked out. There's only a Cyndaquil out there. We're still okay. We're going to be in the prize lead. Nothing to worry about. Hey, everything's fine. Everything's stable. You look at our hand, we're going to get a Vileplume next turn. And here we go. And we can see guys are talking back a little bit. Being very friendly, which is always good. So now here, we have an option. Pretty much anything you do is going to ensure Reshiram gets knocked out. And actually saying, seeing the worst draws ever today. Ever. Absolutely ever. And he says he thinks the cards are being dealt by a horse. I don't know what that means, but okay. Alright, so what we saw him do was skill dive for 30 on the Cyndaquil because the Reshiram's going to be knocked out by poison anyway. It's good that you saw that. Very, very good. And now we're going to see he's back in the lead. Has a definite board position. And we're going to see if he can close it out now. Because next turn he'll have that Vileplume. He's going to shut off all trainers. He's got some Mews ready to go. There's not really any energy. There's no evolutions on his opponent's field. And it's still looking good. It would be hard to lose on this spot, I would think. You have a very strong advantage. Let's just make sure we close out the game. Alright, so looks like our opponent did draw into a Cleffa. And we have a Quilava on the field now. So he's going to be able to Eek, and he's going to start to recover. But we have all these options now with Mew. We're going to have a Vileplume to shut off trainers. So, hey, things are looking up. We're still good. Alright, so now we have some decisions. And before I let him do it, what do you want to do here? I mean, your opponent is stuck with a Cleffa active, a Quilava on the bench with 30 damage on it, so it's got 50 left. We had a catcher in our hand. This Cleffa is asleep. So what do you want to do? Now we had a few options here. Number one, you could Severe Poison, knock out this Cleffa with Poison, taking away his Eek option, and then he's going to be forced to promote a Quilava with no energy on it, and that's his only Pokemon in play, so you're probably going to be in a good spot. The other option, there was a catcher in his hand. He could have catchered out that Quilava, put a Psychic onto Roserade, poisoned it with Energy Signal, and then Power Blow for 40, and then the 10 would knock it out with Poison, and Quilava would be gone. You'd have to play the catcher before Vileplume came out, obviously. But you would knock out this Quilava, and that's big, because he can't play Rare Candy. How's he going to get too many Typhlosions into play without that Quilava? Now, Afrin here went with the other route. He was just going to skill dive 30 on the Quilava, and hope that Axlay here did not have a Typhlosion. If that's the case, he can skill dive next turn for a knockout, which makes perfect sense. You know, you want to get rid of the Typhlosion. But in this case, I would argue, if you want to get rid of the Quilava, you had a better route with Roserade, and you had another route which was to Severe Poison, knock out Cleffa, and that would have cut off all of his draw power and put him in a bad spot where he had to promote Quilava with no energy. So I would have argued he had two better plays here, but still, game's not over. Let's see where it goes from here. Alright, so Cleffa stays asleep. And now we have to think, what can Axlay do to get out of this hole? He's down a prize. He's got a Quilava with 60 damage on it. Cleffa stayed asleep. He has nothing to his name, really. But now we see a couple more basics. 2 Vulpix, Cyndaquil. We're going to see a Collector. And let's see what he grabs. Alright, there's a Reshiram, another Reshiram, and another Cleffa. So, Axlay is on the road to recovery, but he's still a long ways away. Because, you know, with Typhlosion, your goal is to get 2 Typhlosions out, and then you just Blue Flare every turn, keep getting knockouts, and then, yeah, that's pretty much it. You just keep doing that. So, right now, we have Cleffa staying asleep again, and Quilava didn't evolve. So now here, looks like Afrin's plan is going to come to fruition, that Quilava is going to be knocked out by another skill dive, and hey, we're still in a good spot. We're going to be up 2 prizes. There's going to be no Quilavas in play. There's only 1 energy out, so he can't be knocked out. And here we go. Things are alright. We got Vileplume. We got our opponent on the run. He's got no evolutions. He's got no trainers. Looking good to me. Right? What are we going to do here? Axlay can just attach a fire, but he does have an Oak's New Theory. I actually don't mind not knocking out Cleffa because it's always going to be there later for a skill dive knockout. So really, you're playing this game thinking, I only have to take 2 prizes basically. I take 2 knockouts, and then I knock out Cleffa, and the game's pretty much over. But now we can see once again, our opponent uses Eek, and he is he has no evolutions in play still. So, alright. Now, let's come back to me. Alright, so, you're feeling good. You got the advantage. You're up 2 prizes. Your opponent's got no evolutions in play. You got a Vileplume. And he just had to Eek for like the 80th time. So, what can go wrong? All you gotta do is take 3 prizes and you win. It's pretty straightforward. You just kind of win, right? There's not too many decisions you could make that would screw this up, I don't think. But, you know, you have to recognize your situation. You have to recognize there's only 3 prizes left. Will Afrin do it? Let's find out. Alright, so back to the game. So here you have an option. You can knock out this Cleffa, taking your 4th prize, and then you're down to 2. Or you can skill dive something on the bench, setting it up for a knockout. Or you can even retreat to Relicanth, put Muck in the Lost Zone, draw 3. You can start powering up Roserade for an eventual big hit knockout. And I think those are pretty much all your options. Or you could see off for something else. But you probably want to be on the offensive at this point, right? You've taken 3 prizes already. You just want to take knockouts. You have a huge advantage. You just don't want to blow it. At this point, you can actually trade 2 attackers for 1 every time, and you'll still come out ahead. So hey, let's see what he does. Alright, so we see Afrin is thinking this over. You know, there actually are a lot of options here, so I can't fault somebody for not doing the optimal thing here. He's got a lot of Pokemon and some energy, and maybe he just wants to draw into more stuff, so he's going to use Prehistoric Wisdom, putting Muck in the Lost Zone, giving him that option to Sludge Drag. So, at this point, I don't know if I would agree with this. You know, you have to just keep the pressure on your opponent. He's got no evolutions out. Take advantage. even though if you knock out this Cleffa, that Reshram's going to come up and blue flare you. He's probably not going to have a Typhlosion anytime soon, so he won't have a follow-up to that blue flare knockout. And now we see Ninetales is out. You got a Roast Reveal, and uh-oh, Quilava's in town. So at this point, you might be feeling a little pressure. You know, you were ahead, your opponent had nothing, and now he's got a Ninetales and a Quilava, 2 energy on a Reshram, he's threatening a Typhlosion. Maybe we're not in such a good spot anymore, but we do have a comfortable lead. There's nothing to freak out about. Definitely not. At this point, we're going to see another Oak's New Theory from Axlay, and from his position, Axlay's probably thinking, alright, I'm pretty much dead. I can only do what Typhlosion Reshram does, and that's Blue Flare and Blue Flare. And then I'll probably Blue Flare if I can. Maybe Outrage somewhere. So we do see a Blue Flare, God forbid, and a knockout on Relicanth. Losing Relicanth is not a big deal. So now we can see what's going to happen next. We're going to attach a Rainbow to Roserade, Poison and Confuse. And before we go any further, let's stop there. What do we want to do here? We have plenty of options. We can Skill Dive on Cleffa for a knockout, but like I said, that's always going to be there. You know, you're probably going to want to leave that for your last prize. You know, there's no reason to take it immediately when there's other threats in front of you, so I wouldn't do that. What else could you do? You could just use Severe Poison, put 4 damage counters on the Reshram right away, and then also attach a Grass to Roserade, confusing and poisoning it, pretty much ensuring that this Reshram is going to be knocked out by your next turn. There's no real way to avoid it. So there's that option. The other option would be, now that Muck is in the Lost Zone, you could Sludge Drag something out, buying a turn. You know, he only has 1 energy in play, only has access to 1 potential Typhlosion, so there's that option. So, a lot of options again, and this is what gets difficult. You're in the lead. Let's come back to me. You're in the lead. You have an advantage. Now, how do you keep your advantage? How do you not throw it away? You know, it's actually difficult when you get in these spots to close out a game. It's actually probably one of the hardest things in the game. To win a game where you're in the lead. There's a lot of pressure on you. You don't want to blow it. You know, you feel like you should win, but there are a lot of options in front of you. So it's all about keeping a calm head, figuring out what the right decision is, and then executing your plan. And also your plan changes when you're ahead. You don't always have to be as conservative. You can get a little aggressive. In this case, you were ahead a bunch of prizes, so you can go ahead and just knock out some Pokemon. You know, you can trade attackers. Normally, you wouldn't be able to trade Mews for Reshrams, but in this situation, you were ahead prizes, so you had an opportunity to do that. So, it's all about recognizing the situation you're in and going from there. So, let's get back. What do we see here? He put a Rainbow on Roserade, poisoning and confusing the Reshram, and now we see a Copycat. It's going to go to 7 cards. Let's see what he gets. Alright, now, we can see he has some trainers in there. Not used to seeing Catcher and Junk Arm in a Vileplume deck, but hey, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about what he can do with what he's got. So, we saw Poison and Confuse with Roserade, and now we're going to see a Skill Dive, it looks like, and he's going to knock out Cleffa. Now, when I said you want to be taking prizes, you need to be taking the right prizes. You need to eliminate your opponent's threat. Because what Vileplume allows you to do is stop your opponent from really getting fully set up. You know, they can't explode without those trainers. Like in this situation, he can't play a switch to get out of the confusion. He also couldn't play a switch to get out of the Severe Poison, which does 4 every turn. So, I think the best option here would have been one of 2 things. You attach a Grass to Roserade, Confuse, and then Severe Poison, or you Sludge Drag and try to limit the amount of energy he has in play. Now he decided to do neither. Decided to gamble, confuse the Reshiram, and take the free prize on the Cleffa. Now here, he's in a bit of a weird spot. Now, also knocking out this Cleffa kind of opened up a bench spot for him to bench another Cyndaquil, which could be a problem down the line, but as you can see, we knocked out one Quilava early on. There's a second Quilava on that Typhlosion, and a third Quilava is unlikely. Even if he does play 3, he's got to draw into it. So, now we're in a different spot. Alright, so, at this point, the play would seem fairly straightforward to me. But let's throw it to you guys. What do you guys do here? You have a Typhlosion on the bench, with no energy. You got a Reshiram on the bench. The active Reshiram has 2 energy, but it's poison and confused. You got a Vulpix, Ninetales, blah blah blah. So what do you want to do here? The name of the game here, in my opinion, is limiting energy. All the things that attack have a 2 retreat cost. You have Typhlosion on that bench with no energy. And if you Sludge Drag him out, he can't use his power. He can't retreat unless he has a double colorless. So, what do you want to do here? Probably Sludge Drag the Typhlosion. So, we'll see what Afrin decides to do here. Suspense is killing me. Alright, so he's taking a look. He could do Ninetales. That wouldn't be good. And, alright, that's part 1. So let's start off with part 2. Sorry about that. It's a 2-part video. Alright, so looks like he decided to Sludge Drag Typhlosion. Alright. Very good. You recognize the Typhlosion has a 2 retreat cost. You cannot use Afterburner if he's poisoned. So now you're in a good spot. But now let's take a look. Where can he actually go from there? Does he have any way to knock out this Typhlosion? Well, he's got a couple of Mews. He's got a Muck and Crobat in the Lost Zone. So maybe not. Even though he dragged out this Typhlosion, he didn't really have anything to knock it out the next turn. So, I don't know. He might just be able to retreat the Typhlosion in 2 turns, and then attack with Reshiram, and then he didn't really get anywhere. So, it's tough to tell. I think still just using Severe Poison with Crobat and going for Reshiram knockouts might just be the way to win the game. You know, even though you're going to be trading Mews and Reshirams, maybe 2 for 1, you had the prize lead to do that, and at this point, I'm not sure what his plan is actually going to be to win. Because there's nothing really in the Lost Zone that would help him out. There's no efficient attacker that can knock out Reshirams quickly. There's no Zoroark, there's no Cinccino, there's Muck and Crobat. Things that kind of do fancy stuff, but they don't really knock things out. So, where do you go from here? You got a Typhlosion stuck there, but there is another Quilava, so something we worried about, having a third Quilava, is actually there. So, your opponent can actually get another Typhlosion and retreat the next turn, if he gets that next Typhlosion. So that's something you have to keep in mind as well. And we actually see off for a Cinccino, and there's that Typhlosion. So if he has a fire, he can actually retreat, and then outrage our Mew for a knockout. And we might be in some trouble. You know, it'll be 3-2 in prizes. We had a solid lead. We just need to take 2 more prizes. It's not out of reach quite yet, but this is where we are. So we do see Axlay able to retreat here. He's going to send out Reshiram. And this will be an easy outrage knockout because there's already 50 on Mew. And there we go. So, at this point, let's pause again. Alright, so you had an advantage. It's kind of slipping away. How do you recover? How do you make sure you close this game out? Can you keep Sludge Dragging Typhlosion and just hope he runs out of energy? I don't think so. He's got 2 Typhlosions out, so if you Sludge Drag one out, the other one just afterburners to it, you attach a fire, and then it just retreats, and Rush Ram knocks you out. So what do you need to do? You need to fight these Rush Rams head on at this point. You need to just take 2 prizes. We've had a bunch of turns where we're stuck at 2 prizes, so that's all you gotta do. Take 2 prizes, you win the game. Easy, right? Alright. Alrighty. So now we have this Rush Ram active. It's got 10 damage on it. We have a couple Mews. We have a Cinccino, but I actually haven't seen any double colorless from this guy yet, so I don't know if he runs those. And if that's the case, Cinccino's actually a pretty inefficient attacker, which kind of worries me. So, what can we possibly do to get some knockouts here? I would think you would power up Roserade just to get one huge hit, even though he's going to be knocked out, but there we go. He actually decided not to attach an energy. You know, I think you should be building up Roserade in this situation. You should be trying to get one big knockout with that, and then one cheap knockout with a Mew. I mean, you are on a clock at this point. You had time before, but now you have to recognize, not as far ahead as I was before. You know, maybe 3 or 4 turns ago, this would have been acceptable. But now, you have to realize your opponent has access to everything. Look at how big his hand is. You have to realize he's got 2 Typhlosions up. Energy's not going to be a problem anymore. He's got enough damage on these Rush Rams to just keep using Outrage. And I don't know. I don't think the Sludge Drag route is going to work anymore. This fancy stuff can work if your opponent is out of resources, if he has a small hand, or if he just doesn't have 2 Typhlosions. But once he gets this set up, it's tough to win. So, we allowed our opponent to get this set up. We didn't put the foot on his throat. We didn't close the game out. And now we're in a sticky situation. We had a really big advantage, but here we caught another break. He didn't have a fire energy. So we're actually still okay. Now, how are we going to go about it? I really think we should be attaching energy here, that's for sure. But, looks like Afrin's going to decide to skill dive on the Typhlosion. And I'm not sure what this is for. I mean, it's not really getting him anywhere. He's still only got to take 2 prizes. But the only thing I can think about is he plays Jirachi. If that's the case, he wants to get both Typhlosions to 80 and then Time Hollow and then get a win that way. But if that were the case, you might as well just go for Ninetales at that point. I don't know, that's tough. So, here we caught another break. Typhlosion is still active, still has no energy. And what are we going to do? Skill dive again. He's going for that Typhlosion. And you got to think, if he had just targeted down a Ninetales, this game might be over. And now we see a Fisherman, which is kind of unusual for a Typhlosion Rush Ram deck, so that would throw me off. Probably be a little upset. And we see our opponent has a lot of energy to work with. And at this point, we got to be in trouble, I would think. Uh-oh. We were in a good spot. Now it's not looking so pretty. So, our opponent's going to tie the game this turn. And he's going to have pretty much unlimited fire to keep retreating. We can't afford to trade 2 for 1 anymore. What's our way out? And now, you kind of see the grim reality. Uh-oh. I wasted too much time. Probably got a little fancy. But you know, there's still an opportunity if he plays Jirachi. He can Sludge Drag out that Typhlosion that has 60 on it. It'll take 10 from the poison. And then an Afterburner to retreat. Put it at 80. And then if we get 1 heads for Stardust Song on Jirachi, and then attach another energy, a Time Hollow will de-evolve both Typhlosions, and you still win the game. So, we are not out of this at all. And... Alright, just taking a look at his discard pile. And we do have a Twins, so we can actually play into this beautifully. So, right now... you're probably going to see a Sludge Drag or a Skill Dive. Skill Dive makes sure that the damage gets there. Sludge Drag can buy some time. So I don't actually know what Afrin's plan is here. He might just kind of be freaking out because his opponent is fully set up and all he's got are these Mews with not a whole lot going for him. This is rough. I don't know what you do anymore. There's 2 fully built Reshrams, there's 2 Typhlosions, 2 Ninetales. There's no easy targets for you anymore. You had a shot. You had control of the game. But you kind of got fancy. You lost sight of what the situation was. And now, with this play, I can even see there's probably not a Jirachi in his deck. So he actually just doesn't really have a plan anymore, unfortunately. So, I guess the other way around it could be maybe he runs out of cards. Not sure how many cards he has left in his deck. It looks kind of low, though. I don't know. It's tough. We were in such a good spot. I thought we were going to win. But, we didn't take advantage of what we had. There were so many spots where we could have just taken a knockout. Little things kept sludge dragging when we didn't have to. We were afraid of Reshram knocking us out, but at the end of the day, you can afford to trade attackers 2 for 1 when you're ahead by 2 prizes. That's just kind of simple math. You can trade 2 for 1 and you'll end up winning. So these are just situations you have to recognize. And a little chat there, I didn't see that, sorry. Says he wishes he had his 4th Mew. And then basically saying GG. It's getting rough. So at this point, our opponent can't even deck out anymore. He played an Oak's New Theory and shuffled his hand in. And actually, our guy didn't notice he was behind on prizes. So he actually could have played a Twins that turn, but decides not to. And it looks like even though I thought we were going to win, came down to this. And it's not looking pretty anymore, unfortunately. At this point, what can you do? Reshram's just going to get you. There's no way you can avoid a knockout. All of your attackers are weak. You're depending on Vileplume to cripple your opponent's setup. You got Mew. And trying to figure out what went wrong. So this is just an advantage, or an example of how you can have an advantage and doesn't mean the game's over. You have to actually finish the game. You have to actually win. You have to take all your prizes. Just because you're in the lead doesn't mean you've won. And you also have to be aware of what your prizes are like. And we're going to see concede. And we'll just cut it off there. So, there's actually some more stuff that goes on. But, yeah, this is what happens. You can't avoid a blue flare for the game. So, unfortunate, but a good learning experience. After games like these, you really go back and think, wait, I was supposed to win that game. What happened? And when you record the games and you can go back and look at them, it's a helpful tool. You can pinpoint where you went wrong, what happened, and maybe fix it for next time. Because in this situation, I think we can all agree, Afrin probably should have won. If you play that game out 100 times, you probably win 99 of them, barring some freak circumstances. If you just play pretty straightforwardly and just win eventually by taking your last prizes, you can just keep putting 4 damage counters on with poison every time, and you'll end up winning. So, You know, he probably overthought it a little bit, but hey, that's just a lesson. Take your advantage, run with it, think about it. Don't go on autopilot and assume you've won the game. It's tough to actually close out a game, so never lose your head and always think about what you're doing. Even though it looks like you might have the game in the bag, you gotta play it out. Your opponent's not just gonna give up. Well, not always anyway. So that's the game for this week. For now, I'll turn it over to some questions. Hopefully, some of you learned something, because it's going to be an eye-opening experience to see where you went wrong. Even though you might see some stuff and say, wow, that was a pretty bad misplay. You know, in most cases, if you're the one playing the game, there's a lot of pressure, and you might not actually realize that you do some of these things. So this is why I'm advising you guys to actually record some of the games you play, and send them to me so I can go over them for you, or even just look at them yourself, because there are a lot of mistakes you make that you don't really realize while you're playing, and it's just a useful tool to have all this stuff at your disposal. So now at this point, I'll turn it over to some questions. Take about 5 questions from the audience, and yeah, we'll do that.